My husband and I never kept secrets from each other. That was our thing. The thing we told people at dinner parties when someone asked, "What's your secret?" about staying married for 11 years. No secrets. We showed each other our phones without thinking about it. We knew each other's passwords. When something was wrong, we said it out loud, even when it was ugly. So when Mark started locking that drawer, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Not at first. It took almost 3 weeks before I even said anything. It's a small drawer, the second one down in the old oak desk in his office, the one we bought secondhand from a guy retiring from the community college. Mark keeps his stapler in there, some old chargers, a couple of notebooks he never uses. Nothing dramatic. I used to grab tape out of that drawer without thinking twice. Then one night, I went in to find the tape, and it wouldn't open. If you've ever felt like something was off with someone you trusted, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. I remember standing there pulling on the little brass handle like an idiot, thinking maybe it was just stuck, swollen wood or something, until I heard him come up behind me in the doorway, and he said, kind of too fast, "Oh, yeah, that one sticks now. I gotta fix it." I didn't think anything of it. Furniture does that. I said something like, "You should sand it down," and went to bed. It was probably a week later that I noticed he had a key. Small brass key, the kind that comes with old furniture locks, and he kept it on his own keyring now, next to his car key and the key to his mom's house. I only noticed because I heard it jingle when he pulled his keys out of his pocket to lock his office door at night. Not just the drawer now, but the whole office door, which he had never done in the 4 years we'd lived in this house. I want to be honest about something, because I think it matters for understanding what happened next. I am not a suspicious person by nature. My mother was, and it made her miserable, and I promised myself a long time ago I wasn't going to be someone who went through her husband's phone or timed how long he was in the shower. So for a while I just noticed things and didn't do anything about it. I told myself it was nothing. Guys go through phases. Maybe he was working on some project for work, a surprise, a promotion thing, whatever. But it kept happening. Every single night, right around the same time, 10:30 or so, after our daughter Ruby was down and we'd had our decompressing on the couch time, he'd get up, kiss my head, and go gonna finish something up, and disappear into that office for 20, 30 minutes. I'd hear the drawer. I'd hear the little click of the lock. Sometimes I'd hear him talking low, like a phone call, though he always said he was just listening to a podcast. I brought it up the first time on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are trash night and I was annoyed already because he'd forgotten to take the bins out again. And I think that annoyance is what finally cracked something open in me, because normally I would have let it go one more week. I said, "Hey, what's with the drawer thing? You've been locking your office every night." He was doing dishes. He didn't turn around right away, and that's the part that got me, the half-second delay before he answered, like he was deciding something. "It's nothing," he said. "Just some stuff I'm working through. Don't worry about it." "Don't worry about it" is possibly the worst thing you can say to a person who is already, secretly, worrying about it. I said, "Working through what?" "Just stuff," he said. "I'll tell you when it's ready." Ready. Like it was a cake. I let it go that night because Ruby started crying about a nightmare, and by the time I got her back down, I'd lost the thread of the conversation and honestly, some of my nerve. But it saddened me. Ready for what? Ready when? We didn't have ready when in our marriage. We had right now, out loud, even if it's messy. I called my sister Dana about it, mostly because I needed to say it to someone who wasn't going to make it a bigger deal than it was, or at least I hoped she wouldn't. "Okay, don't spiral," she said, which is what Dana says right before she makes you spiral. "It's probably nothing. Guys get weird. Remember when Rob started working out at 5 a.m., and I thought he was having an affair, and it turned out he was training for a 5K he didn't want to tell anyone about in case he DNF'd? This doesn't feel like a 5K thing," I said. "How does it feel?" I didn't have a good answer for that. It didn't feel like anything specific. It felt like a door that used to be open was now closed, and I didn't know why, and not knowing why was worse than almost anything I could have imagined it to be. For a couple weeks, I tried to just live normally around it. We still had our life. I still made him coffee before work. He still texted me stupid memes during the day. We still did the Friday pizza night with Ruby where she insists on putting pineapple on half even though nobody else in the house likes it. From the outside, nothing had changed. It was just this one thing, this one drawer, this one locked door for half an hour a night. But small wrong things have a way of leaking into everything else once you notice them. I started noticing that he'd angle his phone away from me at the kitchen table, which he never used to do. I started noticing that when the mail came, he'd go through it before I did, more often than felt normal, and one time I saw him fold something in half fast and shove it in his coat pocket before I got to the counter. I didn't say anything about the mail thing. I think some part of me was scared of what I'd find if I asked, and an even bigger part of me was ashamed that I was even paying attention to the mail at all. This was not who I wanted to be. The night everything really shifted was a Thursday. I couldn't sleep. Ruby'd had a fever that week, and I think my body just forgot how to relax. And around 1 a.m., I got up for water and saw a light under the office door. Mark wasn't in bed. I stood outside that door longer than I want to admit. I could hear him moving around, the drawer opening, papers, and then quiet, the kind of quiet where you know someone is just sitting there. I almost knocked. I didn't. I went back to bed and lay there with my heart doing something uncomfortable in my chest until he came in around 2. Careful, trying not to wake me, and I pretended to be asleep, which is its own kind of lie, I guess, if we're being honest about who was keeping secrets from who. The next morning I finally asked him directly, no trash night annoyance behind it this time. Just me, at the kitchen table, before Ruby was even up. Mark, I need you to actually tell me what's going on. Not nothing. Not when it's ready. What is in that drawer? And here's the part that messed with me more than anything else so far. He looked at me, and I want to be clear, he didn't look guilty like a man caught doing something. He looked tired, like someone who'd been carrying something heavy long enough that his arms had gone numb to the weight of it. He said, "It's not what you think." "I don't know what to think," I said. "That's the problem." He was quiet for a second, and then he said, "It's about my dad." I want to explain something here for context, because this is where the confusion really started for me, not less of it. His answer left me more confused, not less, exactly like everyone warned me it might. Mark's dad left when he was 9. Just gone. No custody fight, no big blow-up that Mark remembers, just a guy who packed a duffel bag one Saturday and didn't come back Sunday. Mark's mom raised him and his younger brother alone after that on a hairdresser's income, and Mark grew up with this specific, quiet kind of anger that isn't loud. It's just always there, like background noise you stop hearing until someone points it out. He hadn't spoken about his father more than a handful of times in the whole 11 years I'd known him. As far as I understood, the man was basically a ghost. Not dead, as far as anyone knew, just gone. So when Mark said, "It's about my dad," my first thought wasn't relief. It was worse questions. Was his dad sick? Dying? Did he need money? Had he shown up somewhere? Why would that need to be locked? "What about your dad?" I asked. And Mark just shook his head and said, "I'm not ready to talk about it yet. I promise it's not about you. It's not about us. I just need a little more time." He left for work 15 minutes later like nothing had happened, and I sat at that table with my coffee going cold, feeling like I'd been handed one piece of a puzzle with no picture on the box. I didn't tell Dana about the dad thing right away. It felt too private, somehow. Mark's private thing, even though he'd said it to me. I sat with it myself for a few days, turning it over. I found myself, one afternoon while Ruby napped, standing in the doorway of his office, just looking at that drawer. I didn't try the handle. I want that on the record, because it would have been so easy, and there were nights I genuinely thought about it, lying there wide awake next to him, imagining just going down there and finding the key in his jacket. I didn't do it, partly because some old-fashioned part of me still believed if I waited, he'd tell me himself, and partly, if I'm honest, because I was scared that whatever was in there would be something I couldn't unsee once I saw it. 2 more weeks went by like this. The locking continued. The late nights continued. He got quieter in a way that wasn't like him. Mark's a talker, normally, the guy who narrates the entire plot of whatever show he's watching whether you asked or not. And now he'd go still for long stretches, staring at nothing. And when I'd ask what he was thinking about, he'd just say work stuff, which we both knew wasn't true anymore. The thing that finally broke it open wasn't me. It was the mail. I got to the mailbox before he did one Saturday, which almost never happens because he's usually up before me, and there was an envelope in there with handwriting I didn't recognize. Careful, old man cursive, the kind you don't see much on envelopes anymore. Addressed to Mark, no return address. Postmarked from 3 states over, from a town I'd never heard of. And in the corner, where a return name sometimes goes even without a full address, just 3 words in that same handwriting. From your father. I stood in our driveway holding that envelope for what felt like 10 minutes. I didn't open it. I want to be clear about that too, because it would have been so easy right there, alone, nobody watching. But something in me, maybe the last shred of the person I wanted to still be at the end of all this, made me walk it inside and put it on the kitchen counter where he'd see it, instead of steaming it open over the kettle like some movie about a woman losing her mind. He came down 20 minutes later, saw it on the counter, and I watched something in his face just collapse. Not anger. Relief, almost. Like a held breath finally let go. "You didn't open it," he said. Not a question. "No," I said. "But I need you to open it in front of me. Or tell me what's actually going on. I can't do the drawer thing anymore, Mark. I don't care what it is. I need to know." And he sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where I'd asked him 3 weeks earlier, and this time he actually talked. His dad had reached out 5 months ago. Not a big dramatic in-person thing. A letter, out of nowhere, care of Mark's old childhood address, forwarded eventually through his mom, who'd apparently gotten it first, and, in her own complicated grief, hadn't told Mark for almost a month before finally handing it over saying, "I don't want to be the one who decides this for you." The letter had said the man was sick. Not dying tomorrow sick, but the kind of sick that makes a person start reckoning with things. He said he'd thought about reaching out for years and never had the nerve, and he understood if Mark wanted nothing to do with him. But he wanted Mark to know he was sorry, that leaving had been the worst decision of his life, and that if Mark ever wanted to write back, he would answer every single letter, for as long as he had left to answer them. Mark hadn't told me at first because he genuinely didn't know what he felt. He said it was like being handed a bomb wrapped as a gift. He didn't know if opening it would help him or blow up everything he'd built his whole adult identity around, which was, in large part, I am not going to be affected by a man who didn't want to be my father. And some shame under that, too. He admitted. Shame that some small part of him actually wanted to write back, wanted an explanation, wanted, God help him, some kind of relationship with a stranger who happened to share his blood, even after everything. He said he felt like wanting that made him weak, or made his mother's 25 years of hard, lonely work somehow less than it was. So he'd started writing back. Slowly, carefully, testing the water in a way he wasn't ready to explain to anyone, not his mom, not his brother. And this was the part that actually hurt, hearing it. Not me, because he said some part of him was scared that if he said it out loud, especially to me, it would become real and permanent in a way he wasn't ready for. He locked the drawer because his mom had once, years ago, found some of his childhood things about his dad and thrown them away without asking, out of her own pain, and some old fear from that had apparently followed him into adulthood. The fear that someone who loved him might decide, for his own good, to take this away from him before he'd figured out what it even was. "I know that's not fair to you," he said. "I know you would never do that. I think I was protecting myself from an old wound, not from you. But it still ended up hurting you, and I'm sorry." I sat with that for a long time before I said anything. Here's what I want to be honest about, because I think it's the real emotional truth of that whole month, more than any single fact in that letter. My first feeling, underneath the relief that it wasn't an affair, wasn't even understanding. It was hurt. Because for 11 years I thought, no secrets, meant he trusted me with anything. And it turned out there was a version of pain old enough and deep enough that even our marriage hadn't fully reached it. That's a strange thing to sit with. Realizing the person you built a life with still has rooms in him you've never been in. But I also understood, in a way I couldn't have understood before Ruby, before watching my own daughter's face when her own dad walks in the door every night. I understood what it does to a kid when a parent leaves, and how long that kind of wound stays open under the surface even when the person looks completely fine on top. We didn't fix it that morning. I want to say we did, because that would make a better ending, but that's not what happened. What happened is I told him I was hurt that he didn't trust me with it sooner, and he said he understood, and we sat with that discomfort for a few days instead of pretending it away. What changed, slowly, over the next couple weeks, was smaller than I expected. He started leaving the office door open again. Then, one night, he asked if I wanted to read the letter with him before he answered it. I did. It wasn't dramatic, that letter. It was an old man's careful, imperfect handwriting, trying to say sorry in the only clumsy way he knew how. 25 years too late for it to undo anything, but maybe not too late to mean something. We wrote the reply together at that same kitchen table. Mark cried a little, which he almost never does, and I just sat next to him with my hand on his back, not trying to fix anything, just being there while he did the hard part himself. His dad's still alive as of now. They write every few weeks. It's slow and awkward, and sometimes Mark goes quiet again for a day or two after a letter comes, processing something I can tell he's not ready to explain yet, and I've learned to let him have that space without panicking about what it means. The drawer's still there. It's usually unlocked now. Some nights it isn't, and I've stopped needing it to be, because I finally understand that some locks aren't about keeping you out. They're about a person trying to figure out how to survive something before they can let anyone else stand in it with them. We still don't really keep secrets from each other. I think what I learned is that the promise was never really, we tell each other everything the second it happens. It's that eventually, even with the hardest things, we let each other in. Sometimes it just takes a locked drawer, 3 weeks of quiet, and one letter in careful old handwriting to remember that.